and welcome back to the Co-Treat.
Hi.
I'm Jonathan, your occupational therapy person for today.
And I'm Magnolia. I'm your speech therapy professional today.
Wow, so professional. Super profesh. So, Magnolia, what are we talking about on this podcast today?
Probably our favorite thing. But
Disney World?
no, we're talking about play.
That's fair. Well, baby, it's the same thing.
I mean, I
Kinda.
guess. Sure.
I love to play at Disney World.
I guess.
Hello? Love it.
Well, we said the word play like a million times during our first episode or session.
We sure.
So I think it's an appropriate topic to go ahead and dig into.
Yeah.
Because we both love play so much.
Absolutely. And there's so much to be said about play.
Mm-hmm.
Play is such a fun thing. We
It
both
is.
do it. Like we talked about, we both really emphasize play in our practice.
Yeah.
So I want us to dig into why.
Exactly.
Why are we so interested in play? So would you like to go first? Why are you, as a speech therapist, so interested in play?
Well, it's fun. I'm just kidding. I love
It's fun.
I love just answering it with that because it's just.
It is great. I love it, but I need some more meat. I need some more, give me the meat and potatoes.
Okay.
What's happening?
Here we go. So anyway, speech, we all look at different things, but play gives us a lot of information that we need for future development or where they're at in their current development of cognitive skills, social, emotional skills, things like that. So play is a huge component of the observation component of what we do in an evaluation, I would say.
Yeah.
So, we're looking at those play skills because they're prerequisites. Some people even call them pre-verbal skills or pre-language skills because children must be able to engage in play before they're going to engage in communication attempts, things like that. They have to have those milestones met. So that's why we focus on play so much.
Let's see. So play is just, not
It's
just. It's just fun. But so play is kind of you said it's the precursor to the development of communication.
Yes.
And
the social emotional interaction with one another. And so it's kind of just those precursors for that. It also, is just a great way that we also are able to use play as the child's environment in order to address other language goals. Because that's going to be your most generalized way to practice things.
Yeah.
Like speech goals in order for them to be able to generalize those skills in other environments because they play in all environments.
Yeah.
So if we can introduce new skills in play, then we would expect them to be able to reproduce those skills in play no matter where they're at.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. So you explain play because I feel like occupational therapy can explain what play means a little bit better. We're looking at play, but y'all have a better understanding of this is play.
Yeah. So in the world of occupational therapy, there's a very clear definition as to what play is.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of in the broader scope of OT, we have 9 total domains within the world. I think it's 9. Oh gosh, let me play, leisure, social participation. Is it 9?
We'll have to fact check you later.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it's 9. Okay. I got nervous for a second. I literally had to count. But there are 9 domains of occupation, occupation categories. And so oftentimes what people are most familiar with are things like ADLs, or activities of daily living. And that's dressing and feeding and toileting and bathing and all those things. But one of the biggest one for kids is play.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the world of OT, this is the kind of word for word definition in I call it the OT Bible.
Okay.
It's our occupational therapy practice framework, which literally lays out what the scope of OT is.
Mm-hmm.
These are all the things that we can work on. These are all the things that we're looking at. These are all the things that we can address.
Yeah.
So within that OT Bible, play is defined as activities that are intrinsically motivated, internally controlled, and freely chosen. And they may include suspension of reality, exploration, humor,
Okay.
risk taking, contests and celebrations.
Yeah.
And generally, play is a complex and multi-dimensional phenomenon that is shaped by socio-cultural factors. So basically, the big things that I keep in mind when I'm thinking about play is intrinsically motivated.
Mhm.
So it is something that like comes from within us. Like
Right.
we engage in it under our own motivation.
Mhm.
Like we are excited about it and we want to do it. And it's internally controlled. So there's not a whole lot of like external, like constraints
Yeah.
on the play. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Something that's kind of tricky I think this gets lost for adults.
Mhm.
And I think it's kind of hard for us to remember what it is to play sometimes, because a lot of the time what we do for fun as adults is really more leisure activities. So that's also a domain of occupation. And it's more described as like non-obligatory activities that are also intrinsically motivated.
Okay.
But we are engaged in them in our what's called discretionary time,
Okay.
which just means it's time that's not dedicated to other things like
Right.
work or self-care or sleep.
Mhm.
So when I think about play, as an example, the differences between this intrinsically motivated and freely chosen expression of joy and fun
Yeah.
that you kind of think of as play versus intrinsically motivated non-discretionary time
Mhm.
is if I'm at the beach, if I'm like lounging on the beach in a lawn chair, that's going to be more like a leisure activity.
Right.
Or I'm going to play golf. Well, not me. I could never absolutely golf. Okay, let me just ask all the people on the pod. Golf seems so stinking boring to me. I need somebody to like walk me through why golf is fun, because I don't get it.
I know.
But okay, to zoom back in. So golfing may be considered a leisure activity.
Right.
But if you go to the beach and you're splashing around in the waves, you're making little sandcastles, you're doing your little like whatever, like you're searching for crabs.
Yeah.
That may be more play.
Right.
Because it's a lot more, it's less structured,
Mhm.
it's more spontaneous,
Mhm.
it's more, there's less constraints on it.
Yeah.
And it's also like, a lot of times we're doing leisure activities with a purpose.
Mhm.
It's still purposeful. And the fact of like,
That's what I was thinking, like by constraint. The constraint of like leisure is that I'm doing this to relax or have time for myself.
Right.
Whereas play doesn't have that constraint.
Exactly.
It's just play.
Yes. And it can be very fluid.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, you know, if you're, imagine, I could never because I'm not married, sad, but imagine you're like in the kitchen washing dishes.
Okay.
And then your spouse or whoever like runs up and just whips you with the little towel or whatever. That's a moment of play within this. That's a playful moment within this broader occupation of, you know, like homemaking.
Yeah.
And like washing the dishes and stuff.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the difference.
Okay.
And so for kids, their primary occupation, and occupations change as people grow. We know that, you know, like right now, one of my major occupations is being a student.
Right.
Is that education,
Mhm.
but it's not so much for you in this stage of your life right now.
No.
So
Occupation of mom quite a bit
absolutely.
of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So occupations change. And as kids are very small, their primary occupation is play.
Yeah.
Especially when they are before school aged, you know,
Mhm.
like their main occupations are play, ADLs, rest and sleep.
Yeah. Which they don't want to do.
It makes me so sad because the kiddos who are like fighting sleep and they never want to rest, I'm like, baby, just wait. That will change. One day, all you'll want to do is sleep.
I know.
But that's kind of what we think of
Yeah.
as play. is
Definitely.
this that intrinsically motivated, kind of spontaneous, less structured.
Mm-hmm.
It's really kind of happens of its own, like it kind of comes from within you with no real purpose
Yeah.
other than just fun. No
Right.
intentional purpose.
So you, as maybe being more of a student in your master program, what is something that you would look for in like an evaluation of a kiddo to see if they have play skills? Like, is that something you would look at?
Sure. So really kind of more I am more engaged, like I'm more concerned about, are you able to play?
Okay.
Are there barriers that are keeping you from playing?
Okay.
Are there things that are keeping you from, and because play is important for all the things that you have
Right.
said, also all of that, where it's like play is where kids learn. That is
Yeah.
where they develop skill, because that is the environment in which, I'm going to go out and explore my environment through this
Yeah.
fun opportunity. And so they're developing all of these wonderful skills in all kinds of capacities: motor skills, cognitive skills, communication skills,
Right.
like all of these things. That's where they're learning all these things. So when we're looking at kiddos and their ability to play, there's a lot of checking a lot of skills.
Mhm.
It's like, are you acquiring those kind of skills that are important for later, for like as you develop and grow? Are
Yeah.
we seeing that kind of progression, that development and that progression?
Mm-hmm.
But then also, I'm very personally interested in, like, are you showing like age appropriate play development?
Right. Yeah.
So are you playing by yourself? Are you playing with others? I'm very interested in the social aspect of play.
Yeah.
Because that is also very important. And like, humans are social creatures.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's some disruption in that kind of aspect of play,
Right.
then that can have further implications down the road.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's no one right way to play.
No.
Absolutely not. So like our kiddos exhibit different areas of play or strengths in their skills to play at
Right.
certain developmental milestones
Yeah.
of these play. And so like one thing I would like to point out is that, like, especially our neurotypical friends, they may not follow the progression developmentally by the list that we're going to look at today.
Divergent friends.
Yeah. What did I say? I
You
said
said
neurotypical. Wow.
Did one.
Neurodivergent friends are not going to follow the neurotypical pattern
Yeah.
of development of play.
Yeah.
Sorry. Mom of two here doesn't get the sleep
I know.
because my kids want to play
They do.
all day long
And all night.
and all night. Yes. And so remembering that, though, we can find their strengths in their play skills. And so just reminding everyone that there is no one right way of play while we're talking through the developmental stages, but play can give us the information we need to better understand that child.
Sure.
So according to where they're at in their play skills or where their strengths are in the play development, like, that's what we can utilize.
Yes.
It doesn't always mean like they have to go to the next stage of play. That's not what we're always looking for. But it just helps us better understand where they may be and how we can use that to gain more information about communication and other things like that.
It helps me. I also is very important. So from my perspective, as someone who is very involved, hey baby, my little kitty cat. I just put my hand up and my little kitty cat came and gave me a hop up. Hey, little Ajax. Hey. Oh, what you gonna do, buddy? But as someone who's like very involved in, very concerned about like regulation skills for kids, observing kids play and understanding how they are, the skills that they're exhibiting while they're playing tells me a ton about their executive function skills, about their self-regulatory skills.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, wildly informative.
You just learn a lot from a kiddo because they're going to be more comfortable in play as well. So you can just kind of see, like, you can see what gestures they're using. You can see their facial expressions. You can see their emotion levels. Like, do they get really, really upset when the block falls off? Or they can't fit the toy in where they want the toy to go?
Right.
Like, how are they regulating in those situations?
Are they able to tolerate somebody else engaging in play with them?
Right.
They may not be there yet. they may not be ready. That happens especially with our neurodivergent kiddos who are on the younger end. A lot of the time that is still pretty challenging for them.
Yeah.
That's like they're building their little stack of blocks and I try to put one piece on and they're like, I don't think so. This is my stack of blocks.
Right.
You can't even have a block. Like,
well, you're messing up their play scheme.
exactly.
Like, this is their world.
I'm basically Godzilla, and I'm coming in and destroying everything that just happened in their brain.
Yeah.
And I'm like, totally fair.
It is fair.
Totally.
But it's like we have to understand how the kids play
Exactly.
in order to work with them.
Yeah.
And so this is why, like, when I start in an evaluation, it is harder to do it with older kiddos. But once again, like you said, occupations change. So once they're school age, I'm not looking at it as much at the beginning of an evaluation. That might be something I noticed later on in treatment sessions. But at the beginning of evaluations with, say, our younger kiddos, so like preschool age and younger, my goal is normally just to lay a bunch of toys out on the floor and see what happens when they enter. Are they going to explore the toys? Are they going to bring me a toy and engage with me? Do they take it to their parents and play with them? I love it when siblings are in the evaluation because you can kind of like see, do they actually play with each other or
they're like comfortable peers?
Yeah. And so I love just kind of making sure I get like a play sample during my evaluations. And if you're not getting a play sample, please start getting a play sample.
Please do it now.
All speech therapists out there with your kiddos, you just learn so much.
Yeah.
Like, I love, like, you can write down the things you're seeing, and you can even get that play sample while you're talking to the parents. Because, like, I'm not actively doing anything with the kiddo unless if they come to engage with me.
Right.
And I may eventually, you know, like you said, I might try to interact and see how they respond. But that's how I'm going to start that evaluation, just so I can start getting, like, the information from the kiddo and watch them get more comfortable.
Yeah.
Because, like, that is what they want to do. They don't want to come in and look at pictures or go through a step-by-step process. And so I can do that while I'm getting the information from the parent. And I find that really useful.
Yeah.
Because then I kind of can assess, like, where do I need to start? Because play tells us so much.
Right.
So we're going to get into a lot of lists. Not a lot, but we're going to look at some lists about play.
Yeah, because one thing that people may not realize is that play has a progression.
Yeah.
Just like every other set of skills, whatever it is, whether it's your eating skills or your your handwriting skills or all of your motor skills, like play has its own kind of progression.
Yeah.
As far as what we kind of typically see within these certain ranges and stuff, and knowing the progression is really important because like what we were saying about our little friends who may not be at that developmental stage yet, you know what comes next.
Yeah. Right.
So for instance, if our little friends they're not at a point where they're doing cooperative play, where they're taking turns, playing back and forth with another person and like having a really good exchange, maybe they're not there yet.
Yeah.
Then we know to like back it up. It's like, okay, how can I engage in a play? How can I engage with them in play? Or how can I facilitate their play in a way that makes more sense for their developmental stage?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
And I use it a lot because I am so concerned about the regulation abilities, which we will talk about in another podcast.
Definitely.
I could literally have a whole podcast that's just about regulation.
We probably will.
No, I mean like a whole
separate podcast.
I mean like a whole series of like.
You have to do that on your own time then.
On my own time. But I would definitely need like so many other people that know so much more than me to, give me all the scoop, the 411. It's my major area of interest, and so I want to know like all there is to know about it. But in relation to play, like I was saying, so much of the time, maybe my kids aren't ready to have someone else come play with them.
Yeah.
But so then it's like, okay, are they ready? Maybe they can't take turns with me.
Yeah.
But can they tolerate me playing with the same toys that they're playing with?
Yeah.
And if they can't do that, maybe can they tolerate me playing beside them? Like they got their little toys, I got my little toys, and I'm not interacting with them. I'm just playing beside them. Can they handle that?
Yeah.
And then if they can't handle that, can they just handle... I mean, sometimes some of our kids, when they come to see us, they're not even like actively engaging in play at all yet.
Right.
And so maybe then that's where I jump in. And it's like, I'm just introducing things to try to elicit some interest, some like engagement in play.
Right. So we're not using these scales to be like, okay, a kid who is 36 months should be doing this exact thing.
Right.
We're not going to say, okay, this kid is 36 months, so they need to be in this stage right now. So that's
Right.
all I'm going to work on. We're using it as more of like okay, they're showing these play skills, but they're not yet showing the next step.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to like look back and
Yeah.
give me kind of the framework to help build up
Yeah.
to that. It's kind of the way we're using it.
Right.
And so that's just kind of thing we needed to make sure we clear up before we give these lists. Because, like, once you Google list, a lot of parents may freak out of like, oh no, my kid's not doing this by.
They're not doing these things.
And so just important reminder of like why we look at these lists
And
and how we use it to inform our judgment.
Right. And it's important to keep these things in mind too, because like, well, and something else, it's kind of tricky. And this is kind of the thing in general when you're talking about development.
Yeah.
And it's something that we hear, that have heard a lot recently, especially in my grad program, where, development is not always a straight line.
Right.
It is not always linear.
Yeah.
And we're not always going to go from point A to point B to point C to point D.
Yeah.
Some steps get skipped.
Mhm.
Some things, some kids, for whatever reason, especially kiddos who are not developing typically,
Yeah.
quote unquote, typically, they have some other things going on that, make their lives look a little different. Especially for those kids, like development, they may never hit some of these, markers,
Mhm.
which is totally fine. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be any major complication out of that.
Right.
But this development of play is this, it's a culmination of their motor skill development,
Mhm.
their sensory skill, like their sensory processing skills,
Mhm.
their communication skills, their cognitive skills, their social emotional skills.
Yeah.
Like, it's a culmination of all these things
Yeah.
that influence where they land on this kind of like play spectrum.
Mhm. And like once we know like this may be the stage that a child is in and maybe the stage that they're going to be in for a long time, that's whenever we can start having the considerations of like, should we adapt the environment around that, or should we add adaptive resources to that.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's kind of ties into other things we've talked about previously.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I agree.
let's dig in.
So what are we gonna do? What's happening?
We're going to talk about social aspects.
Okay.
So social, emotional, I always tie those two together
Yes.
because they do go with each other.
Yeah.
Because the way you regulate your emotions, show your emotions, also have a huge component with how you are interacting socially.
Mm-hmm.
So these components are the type of plays that we're looking at of like how someone is interacting with another in play.
Yes. But
Seeing play as a social component.
Yes. So this is like, it's like play within a social context.
Yeah, definitely.
So, okay. So what do you expect?
Mm-hmm.
What would be the first aspect of like socialization in play? What would you
So
think?
our first step that we're talking about is called onlooker play.
Okay.
And this is where you can think about any kiddo who's like about less than 1 year old would be like your little babies.
Mm-hmm.
So they're primarily like watching play
Yeah.
at that stage.
Yeah.
So they're not really having that social component of like playing together.
Mm-hmm.
They're in that growing stage of watching and learning the cues from play. And they might have some of those like repetitive, imitative, where they repeat things after their parents or repeat things after other kids. That's all a part of onlooker because they're watching, learning, and then doing it.
Yeah.
But they're not doing it for the purpose of a social interaction.
Yeah.
I would say.
And like to kind of give an example of what this might look like, because this is for like little bitty kiddos.
Yeah.
Right. Teeny tiny little tots.
Yes.
Like,
Babies.
not even toddlers.
No.
Like teeny tiny little people.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense too because if you think about their motor development, they can't do much.
No.
Physically, in comparison to, they're doing a lot, but like in comparison to adults or grown people, they can't do much. They can't get around on their own. They don't have full control of
not many 1-year-olds are like fully walking independently.
Right. And even like before that, you're playing with your kids and you're doing like peekaboo, and you're
Yeah.
like doing little fun things, and they're looking at mirrors, and they're watching, and they're super engaged, and they're like doing other things. They're playing with their little hands,
Uh-huh.
looking and watching. And in the social context, they can't do much
Right.
physically.
Yeah.
So of course, they're just going to be watching and observing what other people are doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That only makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, same in, communication sense. Like, they don't have words yet.
Yeah.
Even towards the end of that spectrum, they may only have, 2 or 3 words around the 1 year of age. And so that means they're not using their words to engage in social play. Of like, hey, do you want to come over and play with this toy?
Yeah.
Or, oh, I like what you're doing. Or, no, I don't like this. Yeah, they're not engaging with that. So this is all just that kind of, I'm watching you. I may reciprocate what you're doing. And that's kind of why we love games like Peekaboo.
Yeah.
We call a lot of these things like speech routine games.
Ooh, okay.
Is what we call it, because like they follow a pattern, whether it's rhyming plays or like little finger puppet plays, things like that. Kiddos love that type of stuff. And that is play for them because they are watching it.
Yeah.
So any sort of thing like that is play to them. Whether they're watching mom make sounds like, which you probably can't hear, but popping. It feels really weird. I was gonna make it louder, but then my lips are dry, so So like whether it's watching, parents make silly sounds like that, reading books, whether it's, like I said, doing the peekaboo game, like those are all play for a baby.
Yeah.
Especially in a speech sense, because they're forming that communication and social connection of, you do this, it makes me laugh.
Right.
That reciprocal back and forth.
Yes.
Also, that face-to-face interaction really helps what we call mirror neurons, like fire up. So pretty much,
that?
I know. Well, like where it's like, okay, I see you doing that, and then I realize I can do that too, and it just makes the neurons fire like in your brain of like, oh, I can do that. We're doing the same thing.
Are there like legit like neurons dedicated to copying other people?
Yeah, absolutely.
What?
I know. We'll have to do like a whole thing on brain anatomy and stuff.
Oh gosh.
To research on those. But we call them mirror neurons, just like basic layman terms of that reciprocal fashion. And that is why like researchers suggest, pediatricians suggest, in-person face-to-face play is the most important during this stage. Right. Not TV, not videos. So
Dora's great, but Dora cannot play with your kid.
Yes. I mean, in a sense. And that's why like people do love
Dora is great.
She really is.
To clarify, I actually really do love Dora.
And like, don't get me wrong, no hate on like watching TV and stuff. Like,
no.
I love watching Bluey with my kiddo. I love watching like little nursery rhyme songs. A lot of people love Miss Rachel.
Yeah.
It feels a lot like work.
Notice Magnolia did not say I like Miss Rachel.
It feels like watching myself work, and I'm like, I can't do this.
Oh, that's fair.
You know what I mean? Yeah, she's practically a speech therapist. So.
But she's not?
I don't know. I don't think so. She sure acts like it.
Miss Rachel, would you like to come on the pod?
That would be so great.
That would be so cool.
But the component of that is like, if your little one, less than 1 year old, is enjoying Miss Rachel and wanting to watch those type of things, you need to be in the floor demonstrating that you are reciprocating what Miss Rachel does.
Yeah. You can do the same thing.
Yeah. And then they're going to look at you and they're going to repeat what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that is where you're going to get the mirror neurons to fire. They're not going to get that same interaction from looking at a TV.
Right.
And there's been plenty of research articles to prove that. So that's really interesting.
That is really interesting. There's something about, I don't know, something about humans are just like wired to really respond to other people, to other human persons. I
think we forget that is play though for our babies.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
The sounds, the reading a book to them, like that is their play.
Yeah.
At the moment.
They're like, I'm watching, I'm observing, I'm enjoying myself, I'm doing it. So then what's after that? After onlooker play, what are they doing?
Next we have solitary play.
Okay. So then what's the difference?
The difference with solitary play is they are now starting to play by themselves. Mm-hmm. So in that instance, and we will kind of break that down, what kind of plays they may be doing in this stage later on. But this is what you might see between like 1 and 2 year olds. So like your toddler stage, like early toddler stage. They're beginning to want to act out their own play schemes. Mm-hmm. And by schemes, we kind of just mean like play actions or like kind of their own idea of play.
Yeah.
And you may experience this like seeing a toddler who's like wanting to look through the book on their own.
Right.
And completing it their way. Mm-hmm. Or like wanting to load up the little shopping cart on their own.
Yeah.
You know,
I
like,
think of play schemes as like plans.
yeah,
They're just plans of like, this is what I got, this is what I'm going to do with it.
right.
That's really all it is. It's just kind of
Yeah.
a set of a plan in their head.
And they start kind of forming those
Yeah.
at that time.
Yeah. And it makes sense too that this becomes the stage. So they've gone from like, I'm just watching and observing
Mm-hmm.
because I can't move around in my environment.
Right.
Thinking again how this is, it's all kind of coming together.
Yeah, it all
Like,
connects.
Now, typically, kiddos around a year to 2 years is when they really get pretty good at getting around.
Yeah.
They're either, if they're not walking, then a lot of the times they're crawling.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, by the time kids are about a year and a half, they're walking around.
Right.
Pretty good.
In about 18 months, we're getting like that word explosion, vocabulary
Right.
explosion. We're getting about 50 words.
Right.
And so like they're able to interact more,
Yeah.
talk more to themselves during
Yeah.
play, make sounds during play.
Yeah.
Like that's all really important too.
It is. And it's interesting because this is all kind of, it's kind of interesting because babies go from looking and watching play
Mm-hmm.
to suddenly, and now I can do my own stuff.
Yeah.
Like I can walk around. I got some pretty good grasp patterns. I can
Yeah.
crawl over to this thing. I can walk over to this thing. I can pick up this toy. And so really it's all this like self-exploration of the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I have so much going on because all of these experiences are new to me that I don't really have the mental space for someone else, for that social aspect of like someone else being involved.
Yeah.
Because all this other stuff is so new.
Right.
Like,
They're so focused on still learning how to play with the toys themselves.
Right.
Because they didn't have that option before.
right. Exactly.
Another thing with this is like, since we are talking about like social emotional side of things, it takes a lot of social emotional skills to be able to do solitary play because you're kind of moving away from your parent.
Yeah.
So you have to
Kind of
have,
gaining more independence.
yeah, you're having to have good attachment skills in
Right.
order to say, okay, mom is going to sit on the couch and I'm going to sit on the floor playing with my toys.
Yes.
Not saying that like the mom could not be engaged, because the mom could be closer and can be
Sure.
engaged, but the fact that the child feels comfortable enough
Yeah.
to play
They
independently.
feel safe and confident to
Yes.
explore without
Yeah.
any sort of like fear of
Hmm.
loss.
So that's also another thing we're looking at
Yeah.
when we're watching, can a kid complete solitary play,
Yeah.
is do they have a good social emotional connection, good social emotional regulatory skills,
Mm.
and do they have that attachment that they can handle that? So
Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah.
I really like that. Honestly hadn't really thought about that a lot. But
and there's like a whole thing on attachment, like different attachments and stuff we can always get into
Oh, yeah.
if we want to, but
attachment is great.
Mhm.
Attachment is so great. Especially when you're talking about, which we will talk
and
about.
like the way what I mean when I say like good attachment, I mean like a healthy attachment to mom and dad where you feel safe.
Yes. A
Even
healthy
like
relationship.
even if I can be away from them for just a little bit, I feel safe.
Yes.
That I know they'll return.
Yes.
That's what we want. That healthy attachment.
Right.
Not just like, I'm not saying like good attachment means like you have to be away from your kid. That's not what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
No. It kind of like the kid can explore on their own
Right.
without the fear that their parent will be gone forever.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
That's what we mean.
Yeah.
So what's our next step?
So then after that solitary play,
Mm-hmm.
then they start getting into this kind of idea of parallel play,
Okay.
where you're playing nearby
Okay.
other people. Sometimes, often it's with like the same toys,
Mm-hmm.
especially, toddler kiddos, and a little bit older, they'll be playing, like they'll be stacking their blocks
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll be stacking your blocks beside them and like,
Yeah.
or they'll be playing with their cars, you'll be playing with your cars, and you're not necessarily playing together. You're not like
Mm-hmm.
interacting there's not like a whole lot of exchange happening,
Yeah.
but you're playing with the same things.
And we're seeing this like with a little bit of an earlier toddler stage, like you said. So like the 2 to 3-year-old
Right.
stage is kind of where we're getting.
These are they're still little.
Yeah.
And they'll also, a lot of times they'll be watching,
Yeah.
they'll be watching what you do over there, and then I'll be trying to do it by myself. So it's
Yeah.
like, oh, you had a car
Uh-huh.
and you made your car go down this little ramp.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a car. Like,
Yeah.
my car go down this ramp.
Yeah, they remember those reciprocal things they learned as a little baby, and they're like,
Right.
"Ooh, I can actually act this out now."
Right.
And that's super fun.
It's super cool. Or, I mean, a lot of times this happens in, I see this a lot in the clinic. and I do this a lot intentionally.
Mhm.
It's actually it's actually a strategy that I use.
Yeah.
I call it a parallel play strategy a lot in the clinic, working with kiddos as a way to like teach them new play schemes where I'm not placing any sort of a social demand on them that's like,
Right.
hey, do this. Hey, try this. Hey, here's this
Mhm.
thing. Watch me. I'm not doing
Right.
any of that. All I'm doing is they're playing with their thing. I have my own toy and I'm playing with my toy, and I'm just looking for them to see what I'm doing and become interested
Right.
and want to explore that new toy.
Mhm.
So, we have like a little game that's it's called Don't Break the Ice.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun because you have your little frame and you have your little ice and you like smash it with the little hammer, but you can't let the penguin fall because if you do,
Absolutely
then
not.
the world explodes. And a lot of the times the kids will be playing with their own thing. Maybe it's dinosaurs, maybe it's a sensory bin, maybe it's the bus, whatever it is. And then I'll just get my little thing and I'll be ding ding ding. And then they'll hear the crash of the ice and
Yeah.
suddenly it's like, oh look, there's another thing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the time, like that's kind of that parallel play where
Mhm.
I'm playing with my own thing, you're playing with your own thing, and there may be some like watching and some imitating.
Yeah.
But again, when they suddenly, well, not suddenly, but oftentimes what happens is if they do then get engaged, they're not ready for the next stage of play yet,
Mhm.
where they'll want to play, but they still don't necessarily want me to play with them.
Right.
It's like they want to try what I just did, but they don't want the direct interaction between me and
Yeah.
this toy.
And probably in their head, they may want you to play with something else
Yeah.
during that time next to them,
Absolutely.
nearby.
Yeah.
And this is a good time for us to start that. Like, we're going to start playing near our kids
Yeah.
so that we can model different play skills,
Yeah.
like play action specifically,
Right.
near them because they're going to pick up on it.
Yeah.
They're watching us, but they're also playing on their own. And so that's something you can do at home or in therapy as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Parallel play is one of my, it's really kind of a,
Mhm.
I love parallel play.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's really good. Especially, but you have to keep that boundary up. You need to respect it if your kiddo is in that stage, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to dysregulate them too much by trying to attempt to force the next stage too early,
Yes.
I would say.
Yeah, and I think that's where, honestly, I think in these stages, these first three,
Mhm.
especially because they are not they're not particularly, while we are talking about these in like a social context,
Yeah,
they aren't very socially engaged.
they're not.
So it's really tricky. And I've seen this many times and I've done this. Like
Mhm.
I have been guilty of this where I haven't recognized where the kids are in their play progression.
Yeah.
And I have, like, with the best of intentions, pushed myself on them to be like, oh my gosh, here's this toy that I really love.
Mhm.
And I think that you'll really like it. So like, let's play it together.
Right.
Even to the point of like, I'm just going full tea here, full truth. Like getting the little kids, having them sit in my lap and, like we're playing with our little, whatever, like our little shape sorter, or we're reading our little book, or we're, playing with our little blocks or whatever it is that we're doing,
Mhm.
like have them sit with me. And they are like not ready for that yet.
No.
They're like, I am not in a place where I can play with you
Yeah.
because my brain has not gotten there yet.
Yeah.
And so it has not, it doesn't go well a lot of the time.
Mm-mm.
And so really recognizing that in these stages of play, they're not ready for that direct social interaction, or they may not yet be ready, and they may not be able to tolerate it yet.
And we don't want to accidentally put the kids through any form of trauma, no matter what it is,
Right.
just to try to force them to get to the next step
Right.
when they're not ready.
Right.
I think we have to start seeing that their cues that they're ready to move on to the next step before we can force it.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be a traumatic experience, like you were saying. Like the kiddo is going to react in a negative way. They're not going to enjoy that because you're putting demands on them that they're not ready for.
Right. And this is something also, to kind of go into this, and this is a whole podcast this is a whole.
Yeah, we really got into this.
We could really dive into on its own, and we want to, because it's like a lot of times in this stage, of play, this early social stage of play where like kids aren't very interactive yet, is when you see a lot of people like, I see a lot of hand over hand where people are trying to play a lot and they're like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to play with this puzzle and we're going to do like, and the idea is from the clinician standpoint, I get it, because the clinician standpoint is I want to see whether or not you can complete, can you complete a task? B, do you have the visual perception and visual motor skills to be able to like, I have a dog. Can I find the dog?
Right.
And then now that I have found the dog, can I fit that dog into its place? Like these are all great skills.
Yes.
And I'm also interested in these skills. But is your kid at a place where he can tolerate somebody, he or she can tolerate somebody physically interacting with their body to help?
Yeah.
You know, it's like they may be in that solitary play stage where I will explore this puzzle on my own, but I'm not ready for somebody else to interact with me and try to help me.
Yeah.
Because I'm just not in that space cognitively or socially.
Yeah.
So
that is a great example. Like now that you're saying that, like I don't think I've ever seen anyone really like parallel play with a puzzle.
Right.
Like, okay, I'm gonna lay this puzzle here for you, and I'm just gonna be over here doing my puzzle.
Yeah.
As a way of modeling that.
Right.
And that could be so much more beneficial because you're staying in their level of play. Say they are at parallel play, you're letting them stay in that level.
Right.
And we're just assessing, are they gonna get that skill? Like observing them while you're doing it.
Right. And it's actually something that I do with puzzles at times is I'll have the puzzles, but just lay the pieces out in front of them.
Yeah.
And then I'll just start putting them in. I will start placing the puzzles.
Yeah, that's a good example of it too.
Then they like so many times, that's all they need is it's like I play the puzzles and then they're like, oh look, this person played with the puzzle. I want to play with the puzzle. But I'm not asking them to. I'm not like I may lay a puzzle in front of them, like lay a piece in front of them just to get their attention. Yeah. But I'm not like placing any forceful demands of like, hey, let's play with this puzzle. Yeah. And I'm not overwhelming them even in some, or like trying to, again, like we're not perfect. And so these are, we fail many times, but the intention, I'm not trying to like overly bombard them, even if I'm coming in and be like, oh my gosh, like it's a great puzzle. I love this puzzle. This puzzle is so fun.
We've got to make sure not to bombard them with
they may not be ready for that
input.
Yet either.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they may just be at a place where they just need to like have their own space and explore it on their own.
And if you are truly working on play skills, so say you are wanting them to start doing play with a puzzle.
Yeah.
If that is your main goal or the parent's main goal, then it's not really any longer a play skill if you're starting to put direction demands on it.
Right. Because it's not intrinsically motivated.
No. It's no longer play.
It's not. Right.
Exactly. It's following directions.
It is. It's following directions.
We've left play and we've moved to following directions, which there is a time and place for following directions. Absolutely. That is a goal that we often address. Especially, that's a big one that parents need addressed.
Yeah.
Quite often. And I'm not saying like a following direction goal is bad. I'm just saying like if your goal is to work on play, you can't transition to directions.
Right.
Then it's no longer play.
Right. Well, and it's true that like in different contexts, it makes more sense.
Right.
Do we want our kids to be able to follow directions while they're playing? Maybe it's not play if they are. Do we want our kids to follow directions during like bath time?
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so like context makes a big difference too.
Right.
You know?
And we did say earlier, play can be used to address other goals.
Yeah.
So what a better way to word it would be like, we are working on following directions in the environment of play.
Sure.
You can do that.
Yeah.
But that is not targeting play skills specifically.
Right.
Which is what we're focused on.
Right.
More right now.
Exactly. So I think that's really important to keep in mind when you're thinking about how you're interacting with other kids or how you're interacting with kids in general.
Yeah.
Whether it's in a therapeutic sense like us or whether you're a parent like you or anybody else that has kids.
Yeah.
Or even if you're just interacting with kids, considering what social stage of play they may be in.
Yeah.
Because these first three, this onlooker, solitary, and parallel play, are not very socially interactive. So, but once they have kind of developed some more of that, they've been in the parallel stage for a while, they've been looking and imitating you play. Where do they go
Yeah.
from there?
Then they're going to go to associative play next, which, I mean, I really love the names of these plays because I feel like they're very, like, self-explanatory for the most
Yeah.
part. But our associative play is just playing with others, but sometimes playing by themselves. So this can happen around the age of 3 to 4 years old. So we're kind of just going up each year. But associative play is that, like, beginning, like you mentioned earlier, they may want to, like, start seeing what you're doing. This is going to be more of like, oh, we could start interacting
Mm-hmm.
in play.
Yeah.
It's not fully we're going to play the exact same play scheme all the
Mhm.
time or work the play scheme out together, but it's going to be like we're going to start playing together
Yeah.
with the same things.
Right. And I think this is the stage too when like kids start to give toys to other people.
Yeah.
And I mean, and also this is all kind of it can also be very fluid. Like you may have a toddler that's
Mhm.
giving you toys and stuff, and they want to see you do something with them. But in this associative play stage is where you'll think preschool,
Yeah.
think early preschool, where kiddos are like they're following each other around in lines, they're
Mhm.
borrowing toys from each other,
Yeah.
they're giving each other toys.
They finally have like the communicative skills to start actually talking to each other and understanding
Right.
each other
Right.
to where like you can talk, like communicate during play
Mhm.
and like express your preferences and your wants,
Yeah.
because that's important. Like you're not gonna play with another individual if you don't feel comfortable enough,
Right.
and you're not gonna feel comfortable if you can't communicate to them.
Right.
They're like, hey,
Exactly.
stop that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or like,
Or I don't like that.
I don't like that.
Or I do like that.
Yeah.
This
Or
was really great.
can I have some of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like until you get to that point, like communication wise,
Yeah.
that's why you're not going to be in this level until
Right.
then. That's why we don't expect this
Yeah.
until later on.
And it's absolutely. So I think associative play is really, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of a stage, to be totally honest, I think it's one of the stages that gets forgotten
Yeah.
a lot of the time.
I think we definitely want to jump to the next one.
I don't hear associative play used. I don't hear that term used a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I hear solitary play and parallel play and cooperative play, but I don't hear associative play a lot.
Way to spoil the next stage.
Well,
Nice.
it may be foreshadowing. But yeah, so associative play is that very beginning of
Mhm.
I'm playing with another person, but we're not necessarily working together.
No, definitely not.
We're playing with the same toys, we're playing at the same time, we are interacting. This may be, where kids start to I'm thinking about, what you kind of see around preschool age, where kiddos will I think this is also when like imaginative play is kind of really becoming a big
starting to
thing,
emerge. Yeah.
where they're playing in the kitchen and they're
Mhm.
doing like they're giving one person's cooking and they're like making food for people or those kinds of things where
Yeah.
they're definitely interacting with another person while they're playing,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not working together to achieve a goal
Right.
yet.
Absolutely. And this, I think, also easily could be seen with like playing with cars specifically,
Sure.
because you could both be playing with a set of cars maybe
Mhm.
on a track or something like that.
Yeah.
So you're both playing with it, and you may even switch cars occasionally.
Yeah.
You may pretend to like run your cars into each other,
Yeah.
like little kiddos do.
Yeah. You may even race.
Maybe race,
Yeah.
but it's not consistent. Like you might do that for a little bit and then return to playing by the car by yourself.
Sure.
So you're not like fully playing together.
Right.
I think there's still that space of like, okay, I can go play by myself
Yeah.
occasionally, and sometimes they do need that
Right.
at that stage. So what's our next stage, since you didn't spoil it already?
I spoiled it. So after that, associative play is really when we start seeing a lot of social interaction, a lot of really complex social interaction
Mhm.
with kiddos, and it's that cooperative play stage.
Yeah.
So we're really like playing together
Mm-hmm.
with this idea, and we've got like some sort of common mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is like above 4 years old, so your
Yeah.
preschool age, like it really lines up with school
Yeah.
really quickly, and it makes sense of why we start preschool at that age, because
Yeah.
now they're at the stage of, hey, they want to play with people.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Right.
But I think the big thing here is you should expect your child to want to play with people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one thing we do forget here is like, we have a 4-year-old, they're a little bit older, they should go play by themselves. Well, it's actually kind of the opposite of that. They have developed all of these social and emotional skills that now they have the desire, they want to play with people even more than they ever have before. Yeah. So even at home, you might feel like that high demand of your kid to want to play with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important to understand too, because like they've developed all these skills, now they want to use them.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy for us to be like, oh, they're 4, they should be playing by themselves.
Yeah.
But it's just not true.
Yeah. No,
they want to explore all of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point.
Yeah.
A really fair observation, because oftentimes I do have noticed that with just my interactions just kind of growing up and stuff, where it's like these kids, like, you need to like learn to occupy yourself.
Yeah.
And like you said, this is the period in time where they're really looking to explore with other people and build these connections with people, with unfamiliar people.
Yeah.
This is really when they get excited about making connections with people that they don't know. Because up to this point, it has been their social circles are very small.
Yeah.
And they don't have a whole, like it's typically family, close family. They maybe some family friends.
Yeah.
But their social circles are really little. And so around this stage, and it does line up with school, and I'm not really sure what came first, whether this development of cooperative play and school age or vice versa. I don't really know. And maybe it's kind of like an analogous thing where it all kind of
just a basic understanding of like the development of kiddos,
Yeah. But this is like, now they're very interested in like making new friends, meeting new people, like playing with other play partners.
Yeah.
So it's really precious.
It really is.
I have a friend that's definitely in this stage currently, and he makes me smile so big, because anytime that we go into our gym area, if there's another kid in there, he is so excited about it.
Aww.
He's like, okay, I'm gonna go play with my friend. And I'm like, you go play with your friend, pal. Like, you go do it. And it's so funny because now he's used to seeing the kids that are there at the same time that he is. And he'll ask, he's like, where's my girl?
Aww.
Doesn't have a clue what her name is. But he's like, where's my girl? Where is my girl here? Where's my girl? And I'm just like, I just love this, because he's so excited to come and like see his new, even though he don't have a clue what her name is. And I told him, it was funny, I told him what her name was the other day, and he was like, no, that's my girl. And I was like, that's right.
I love that.
And then even still, like, even if it's not his girl, even if it's another one of the kids, he gets really excited, and he is trying to go, like, he really wants to go play with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
Yeah. So
keep that in mind.
All of these social, emotional aspects of play, like, give us so much information. Yeah. And they just make sense, the stages do, based on all the other stages of development, like we've talked about, like the gross motor and communication skills, fine motor skills. They all correlate.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. So
I think and I really think that it's very important to, like we said, to really remember that these social skills, a kiddo's social skills really influences their ability to regulate.
Right.
And their ability to regulate really influences their ability to interact and engage with people. So it's all intertwined.
Yeah.
So all of these things are kind of developing together. And so it's important to recognize, like we said, these are things that we can look at, both to kind of informally assess where kids are, like what kind of stage of development they're in, where kind of skills that they have, but then there are also things we can use these principles to guide our intervention and to guide how are we going to interact with it, though. Like we were talking before about, are they able to engage in socialization? I mean, in social demands, like with these social demands that were placed on kids, are they even ready for that?
Right.
Because they may not be. Likewise, what you were just talking about, how maybe they're really needing a lot of social interaction. And are we providing that for them? Are we spending our time while they're with us as therapy people? Are we really dedicating the time to interact with them?
Yeah.
Versus being, and it's so hard.
It is
so hard because there are other things that are also going through our brains. Like we're also concerned about all of the like administrative things, like the scheduling and the documentation, which I want to throw in the trash so much of the time.
And the billing.
And
we won't even talk about that again.
I'm having a trauma reaction. My blood pressure immediately goes up. But we're like focused on those things. And so it can be really tricky to dedicate our like mental energies into giving these kids the social energy that they really need in these, as they get into these higher stages where they are, they need socialization. They need someone to interact with them. And so it's really good to just keep these things in mind, just to kind of guide how we interact.
And if there's any parents listening, take the time, but also, give yourself some grace in that area too, because you can only do so much.
Play dates. Yeah. Make friends with other people.
So that you're not the only play partner.
Seriously. I mean, but like, seriously. Yeah. Like, I mean, I said that kind of jokingly, but honestly, like, if you can, find a community and find people that, because also this is something that happens too. And it's really magical. And I love it so much. Kids really want to play with other kids.
They do.
There's something about kids' interactions with each other that is just, it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I just love it because we can have a kid that is like so over me. They are so tired of like hanging out with Mr. Jonathan. But as soon as kid A comes in, they are ready.
All about their girl.
They are so ready for their girl. And it's just great. So honestly, like if you are a parent and you are struggling to have the social energy or the mental energy to interact with your kid, you don't have to do it alone.
Right.
If you can find some, there are community groups, local libraries have play dates a lot of the time. Yeah. There are ways to find a community to help give your kiddos those interactions. You don't have to you don't have to do it alone.
Right.
There are resources out there.
But you are doing a great job.
Absolutely.
If you're concerned about their play at all, you're doing awesome.
Absolutely. Parents are amazing. And I really hat off to all the parents.
Yeah.
It's a big job.
And thank you to all the therapists who use play in therapy because it's just so important.
Absolutely.
We're way passionate about it.
Yeah. We love play. It's so important for so many reasons. And I hope that other people that they can feel the passion.
Yeah, I hope so.
Feel the passion.
So, do you have a therapy win you want to share?
A therapy win for the week?
Before we end?
Let's see. What is my therapy win of the week? I did not prepare one ahead of time.
Oh, my goodness.
So I'm thinking. One of my therapy wins for the week was... Let me think. I'm having a hard time here. I wasn't prepared. My brain was not prepared.
Well, how about we had this one kiddo. We also, I think, shared this last week. And she's kind of difficult looking at what play level she's at. And we've had conversations about what play level she might be at. Maybe in the parallel play. Maybe.
I don't know.
More solitary.
That's
fine.
My brain is not.
It's fine.
I'm not picking up the
nonverbal cues. It's okay. My session with her felt like I was having to just kind of see where her level of play was. And that's a therapy win in itself, that I had the time that I could be like, okay, where are you at in this level of play? So I can see how much engagement I can give in order to address her speech goals. Because she had just very basic interaction, basic language goals, want to communicate, things like that. And so I was just having to kind of look back and be like, okay, where are you at? Because this is not a kiddo I see frequently. And by watching her, I could just kind of tell okay, she's getting near people.
Yeah.
Like, she walked into the gym and went straight to the number puzzle on the floor,
Mhm.
which other people were playing with.
Yeah.
But then she didn't want them to touch it once she got over there.
Sure.
So she wanted to be near people, but didn't want them to really interact with what she was doing. So I think we're starting to emerge into parallel play, but it's definitely a new skill for her.
Right.
But I love that. I loved watching her
Yeah.
start doing that because I remember seeing her, I think, during her first evaluation, and she was still in the onlooker stage, I would say, even at the age of like 2.
Yeah.
She was still very onlooker,
Yeah.
which is fine, but it definitely, we've had to watch that progression.
Right.
And so now that I was able to notice, like, oh, she's starting to interact with people, like, oh, she wants to be near people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I was able to go get, like, a marker board, and, like, I would start drawing, and then she would, like, play with her little toy over here, and then she would, like, come to the marker board and play on my marker board.
Wow.
And then, like, see, it's just, like,
Yeah.
seeing that emerge.
That's exciting.
Seeing where she was at and being able to do that
Yeah.
for her without adding any extra stress to her, anything like that. It felt good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's pretty a direct example about these
about play.
play skills.
Okay. So
So-
I mean, I have okay. That reminded me of win, and this
Okay.
is actually not. It's not necessarily a win for me,
Okay.
but it was a win that I observed.
Okay.
So with one of our kiddos who has a similar situation
Okay.
where he is still kind of in a space where he struggles to move outside of that solitary play.
Okay.
So he's in that like solitary parallel play,
Yeah.
merging station, like space.
He's in
you
the
know?
in between.
He's in the in between.
Okay.
And what he was, and it was so cool. It was so cool. I was co-treating with one of our speech people, and he was giving her pieces to. They had got the sensory. We had a sensory bin out, and that sensory bin has like dinosaurs in it and some trees and stuff. And he was giving her the pieces to
Mhm.
put in the box, to put
Oh.
in the sensory bin. And before that, he'd been arranging them. He'd put the trees and he'd stack them, like he'd place them
Yeah.
in, and he'd put the dinosaurs in, and then he'd mess them up. And then, but if we like tried to get a dinosaur, it was hard for him.
Yeah.
But he got to a place along the way where he was giving the speech person the tree or giving her the dinosaur, and she was putting them in, and he was watching her like put them in.
Oh.
So he was
Like intentionally watching. her.
intentionally giving her the pieces to then see what she would do with them.
Wow.
And he did it like 4 or 5 times, which I was super stoked about because he was interested in what this other person, this other play partner was doing. And I was like, this is awesome. This is huge. Like, this shows a lot of maturity for him. So that was really exciting.
That is a
So
good
it's not my
therapy.
personal win, but it was a win that I observed.
I think when talking about play though, you can see such little wins. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah. No, that was
little wins.
that seemed so small,
But it felt huge.
but it was major.
Yeah.
It was really major. So I loved it.
Yeah.
Let us know what your play wins are this
Yeah,
week.
definitely.
Like, let us know. Tell us on our Instagram at the.cotreat on
Yes.
Instagram. Or you can email them to us.
Yeah.
We got our little email.
Or email us some suggestions for something you want to learn about.
Yeah, for sure. Also, we had been kind of thinking about, not to spoil too much, but we've been kind of thinking about this idea, talking about play. We've been tossing around the idea of doing like fun little play toy interludes, like
Yeah.
little short snippets of get a toy that we like to play with in therapy and then talk about all the things that we would do with it. Is that something that you guys would be interested in? And they'd be short. They'd be like 10, 15 minutes. or
Yeah.
so. Like just
Yeah.
teeny tiny.
Yeah.
Kind of intermittent as little like bonus episodes to be.
Yeah. Give us some ideas for, parents, educators,
Yeah.
anyone near a kid, therapist.
Yeah, let us know. So message us at the.cotreat on Instagram, or our email is the Cotreat podcast, all one word, no hyphens, no special characters, at Gmail.
Yep.
So, okay, that's session 3. We
That's
did it.
it.
Talking about play.
Have a great day and go play lots.
Oh yeah, go play lots. Let us know what you're playing today. Bye, everybody.
Bye.